Would you like to learn about retrieval, augmented generation, and the concept of generative AI architectures? If so, this video is for you. Hi, my name is Mike Gibbs, and I'm the founder and CEO of Go Cloud Careers, and I am joined here by David Linthicum. He is an expert on cloud computing as well as AI architectures and has well over 35 years of experience in AI. Today, we're going to talk about retrieval-augmented generation. So, David, could you talk about what is retrieval-augmented generation?
Yeah, basically, and it's a technology that allows you to augment your inference engine with information that's going to be more up to date and checks the reliability of the information that's coming out of the knowledge base. So we realized early on, and I think if you're a user of ChatGPT or Gemini, other things, you may see aspects of this today, where it'll not only bring you information out of their knowledge base, it probably was built 6 months ago, sometimes longer, and will augment that retrieval with information out of so you get context, so you understand new information is generated around it. It identifies other things going to be relevant to the system, and it gives you gives you a more accurate depiction of what the knowledge is. And so you're able to use something like this in a business setting. It's able to find the information out of the knowledge base that you built. And normally that's going to be built incrementally, but it's not going to be updated daily. And it will go out to a vector database, which will look and search at other things that are relevant to the query that you have. And number one, make sure your query is up to date. You're getting correct information, which is very important, but also augment it with more context. So you have contextual, rich, factual systems. So you're really, if you're doing this well, you're getting information that's almost perfect, because you're not only just getting information that comes out of a knowledge base where there's been a consensus as to that's the right information based on the question that I asked, which is good. And that's kind of the initial phase of generative AI. But we augment it and put it in the correct context with data that will exist in other places. So when you're building, if you build this correctly, like I tell my students, you're actually getting information that's coming out of these systems that's almost perfect, because it not only is it the right information that's coming out of a database or coming out of the knowledge base, but it's been augmented and checked with the best available data at the time to make sure you're getting the proper representation. So the value would be we're able to get business data out of our knowledge base, based on historical information that could be, 1 to 20 years old, and augment that with current information that exists in our inventory database to give us more context, and also check to see that if the information we're getting out of the knowledge base is factually correct and put it in the appropriate context. So it has a benefit in the fact that we're just checking things that are coming back from an inference engine, and we're making sure that it's correct in what it's providing us, but it's also providing us with more context based on the question that we're asking. So it just makes generative AI better. It makes businesses' use of generative AI that much more valuable, because we're not just dependent on when that knowledge base was trained, and we're able to bring relevant information, which is augmenting those retrieval systems, which is capable of providing us with a better array of information, which is going to be more valuable to us. And if you use generative AI systems today, ChatGPT is an example of that with a 4.0, they already integrate this with your existing stuff. You can do live searches as part of it. You can use your own space. They're able to give you information that was produced that day, along with information that comes out of their knowledge base, which is the greater piece of information, which may be information that's based on, petabytes and petabytes of data that's been trained, that existed over the last 20 years. But in doing so, you're getting the complete picture. So it's an augmented way of using generative AI better, the ability to get at more accurate data in context, more useful uses of generative AI. People complained quickly when generative AI came out, I'm only getting information as to what this thing, when it was trained. We saw that in, ChatGPT, the early days when it came out. Yeah. This fixes that. And so this is something a lot of people who are building generative AI systems are using.
Yeah, and I noticed it with the ChatGPT 4.0. And I noticed it because I typically like to see what I get out of something like that. And then I do my own research. And with the earlier versions of ChatGPT, it was like, okay, this is good, but I fact checked everything, and some was right and some was wrong. And now, what the output that comes out of it, it's very good, and it's in context and it's more meaningful. And when I check it, it's like, well, this is right, this is right, this is right. The accuracy of it has gotten so much better.
It has, and that's what people are expecting for their business data as well. So in other words, we're just not dependent on the point of something was trained anymore. And we're also not dependent on just raw data that's coming back out of the system. We're using both.
Yeah.
So the generative AI system is able to assemble patterns, and that's what it does. Patterns of information that it learned over time based on the question that you're asking or what you're asking for it to do. And it's able to discern what those patterns are to give you an answer that's probably going to get you to pretty close to what you needed based on the time it was trained. But it's also able to look at the existing data that's in its vector database, pointing to other systems where information is currently up to date, perhaps even a minute old, and bring that information to you in a way that's going to be more appropriate, more contextually more contextually correct. And like I said, businesses absolutely have to have this. If you're dealing with supply chain integration, you're dealing with stuff. You certainly want a knowledge base to understand the behavior of the vendor and logistics systems over a long period of time, because that's where the knowledge engine comes from. We have this experience that's built in the knowledge into the knowledge model. However, it's also important that we have current information, like where a piece of a good or a service or raw material is in transit now, where a truck is located, where how efficient the factory floor is running, and even the weather of the current. All those things are relevant to it. So we're able to get it to the last mile of information to bring it to that enhanced degree of enhanced value, where it's able to kind of take things to the next level and make that system much more useful. People underestimate the value of RAG. And the fact of the matter is, it's fairly easy to build. It takes a vector database, so we're pointing to different pieces of content. We're putting validation engine, but also most of the tooling out there supports RAG. That's part of the system, and so it's easy to build into it. It's easy to augment it. It's easy to put it into the training cycle. It's easy to continuously improve. Doesn't cost that much to run. Doesn't take that huge amounts of processor power to drive, because we are just doing very minute and tactical things. And it's something that just makes generative AI much more usable. The concerns everybody had, we just mentioned a minute ago, were legitimate. In other words, if you're just telling me I'm getting a picture of knowledge as to when the thing was trained, that's not doing me much good, because I run a business here. My business is running today. It's great to know how best to optimize sales via weather conditions, over the last 20 years based on data that was trained for the last 20 years. Great to have that information, but I still need to know what I need to do with that stuff today. That last mile problem just kind of make generative AI that much more valuable, that much more useful for folks out there, for businesses who are looking to use it as something that's going to be strategically good.
I completely agree with you on that. You mentioned two other components of generative AI architectures, and in case our audience doesn't know, I was going to ask you about that. Could you describe what an inference engine is, as well as what a validation engine is?
Yeah, inference engine is basically something that processes the question that you asked. So in other words, when we ask a question to a knowledge base, an inference engine will carry out the response to that question. And obviously with generative AI, it deals with natural language processing. So it interprets what we say, either the spoken word, or we type on a prompt, or we're entering something into our phone. And it's able to apply that question or apply that query across their knowledge database to come up with the best possible answer based on their interpretation of what they think you mean. It's very effective, because not only in the generative AI has kind of took everything to the next level, we're able to discern what you likely mean based on your a prompt that you're using via simple English to ask a question. Tell me about RAG. Tell me about generative AI, and then it finds the best possible answer to answer the question. Validation engines basically validate the response that comes back to make sure we're getting the correct response. We can't have hallucinations that come out of generative AI systems because the data that they're trained upon is not perfect. Even though they do the best to carry the hygiene out, they have lots of checks that exist within the inference engine or exist within the training data in the way in which the thing is trained to ensure that we do not get too many invalid answers or hallucinations. The validation engine is able to look at stuff and say, hey, this does not agree with what I have, and can automatically resubmit it back into the knowledge base, ask the question in a different way, see if it gets a response that's able to repeat itself. So therefore, we have a higher likelihood of that response being correct. And also we're able to augment that response again with the existing data, which is able to, number one, check the response to make sure we're not saying something that's wildly wrong. And we're able to get the right information in the right hands and understand that it's valid and it's coming back. It's going to be more valid than comes out of a database. We can have bad data that exists in a database, and it'll show you that bad data. If you ask the data, you're able to retrieve that data. But this is something we're able to take the knowledge model, take the data that comes out of the knowledge base, and look at it, reevaluate it, validate it, recheck it, if have to, resubmit it, ask the question again, the ability to bring things up, your ability to communicate with a response that's going to tell you exactly what that data means. Understand that that data is going to have almost a 99.9999% chance it's correct. The question that you ask is then responded to in a way that you should be able to get the response based on how you worded it. So it's a very accurate way of looking at information, looking at behavior, looking at knowledge. And they built it in there because there had to be lots of checks and balances, because these things are built on imperfect data.
David, thank you so much for describing that. Obviously, we discussed retrieval-augmented generation, but you mentioned some other components like inference engines and validation engines, and I wanted anybody that was here to get a good understanding with this. David, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise and your wisdom with generative AI architectures and RAG in this video. If you're out there and you want to become an AI architect or a cloud architect or an enterprise architect, we've got a lot of free webinars and free ebooks in the description of this video. So check out the description of this video, download some of those things, and join us in a webinar. An AI architect webinar with me and David, an enterprise architect webinar with us. We'll discuss the role, we'll discuss what we do, and then we'll answer questions. We'd love to meet you there. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to our channel and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to help you in your technology career. This is Mike and David signing off for now. We'll see you soon.